Here we are for Legends Night number 2, 27th of November 2011. Going to be hosted by Skylines Australia, New South Wales. And the guests tonight will be Fred Gibson and Jim Richards. There's Fred and motorsport team. Restaurant manager Rebecca and our exec team
behind the scenes work.
El Presidente. Yeah.
Voila.
We're not very exciting, Terry.
Oh yes, you are.
We're really not.
Here's our VIPs. Here's our show cars for the day. And Jez's car's missing. Where are you, Jez? Yes. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Great hearing these things start up, John. Hi, Terry.
Terry, how are you?
Nah. Yeah, that rack will be custom made.
Yeah.
Nothing like a bunch of old guys pushing a car in.
Yeah.
I can say that because I'm younger than most of them. Nice wheels. Your blue one would have looked good really here, Brett.
Yeah, just unfortunate it didn't make it. Sounds good, but
Yeah.
I had it going for, you know, a couple of minutes. It's getting all to the head, just not enough.
Okay.
So,
Who's doing the work for you?
me,
Yeah.
the whole thing in me,
And who'll do the tune?
haven't decided yet.
Of those, it's great, they're only $50. We also had a private drag day at Western Sydney International Dragway. That was great. Heaps of runs. It was basically by 10:30. There was no one in the lanes. So if you guys that are keen on coming drag racing, you don't feel like staying in line on a Wednesday night, come to one of the private days. We had the AGM, of course, in which Eric and the new team got elected. Look, it's been a fantastic year. The last event, as Eric said, is Wakefield next month. That's the 17th. At the moment, I think we've got like 10 entries or something like that. It's just ridiculously full of track time for people who want to come along. We'll also have, good on your Autosport for coming late. She'll sort you out. It's not a time on time. Okay, so yeah, if you guys do want to get some track time in before Christmas, then the 17th of December, you're basically members only chocolate factory tour and cruise. It works, okay. In April we've got a social cruise, and in May, a little surprise, we're going back to Sutton Road. So those of you that have been down there before will understand how much bloody fun that is. So we're going back there again. That'll be a really, really small amount of entrants, like 37, maybe 40 max. So as soon as that entry fee goes up, guys, get into that, because otherwise you'll miss out. June, we're going back to the drags, so you can drive straight. In July, we've got another skip hand. August, social cruise. September, social cruise. October, we've got the another skip hand at Marimba. In November, we have the SAU Nationals, which some of you obviously went to this year and was quite good. Then in December, we've got dinner again. We'll talk about that later, Terry. And the Party Road Cruise. Now, over the last year, the club has had support from a lot of different companies, and we'd just like to recognise each of those right now. Firstly, Trackside, thank you for letting us come here and drink all your booze and whatnot again. Thanks, Terry. Next, we've got Unigroup Engineering, did a dyno day there. They do mechanical work and dyno and whatnot. Home Health Group, that's our own Terry, right there with the camera. Just Jap, Top Secret Imports, Jap Fleet Motors, Import Monster, Autocol, right here blinding me with a flash, and Autosport Engineering, the blokes that came late. So guys, thank you to everyone that has supported the club this year. We hope you'll support us again next year. It really does make a difference for a small not-for-profit club like us to get sponsorship from companies to allow us to run our days cheaper for entrants. Simple fact, if we didn't have these companies on board, entry fees to events would cost more, and no one wants that. So everyone, please support those companies if you get a chance to. Now, what's going to happen next, we've got some waitresses and waiters waiting, ready to take your order. So please, everyone, have a look at your menus and decide what you want. Something else, just while there's a bit of a lull, you will find there's question cards in baskets on each of the tables. They're pretty self-explanatory, but we're pretty much going to need those back in around about an hour. So you've got plenty of time to get to them. Guys, please do get to them. You can write anything you like, as long as it's not too rude. I'm sure everyone will be happy to answer the questions. And with that, let the waitresses do their thing, and we'll be back on the mic in a little while. And how Nissan started into motorsport. It's got a fairly interesting history that not a lot of people here may know. So what I'll do, I'll hand over the mic to Fred, and he'll be with you for about 20 minutes. Thanks, Fred.
Thanks for that. Thanks for inviting Jim and I here for tonight. It's a pretty special night, I can see by all the enthusiasts that are here. What I thought I'd like to speak about tonight is really a lot of people don't understand how Nissan started in circuit racing. They know they started with, like I suppose you say, Bluebirds and those sorts of things. I suppose I had an opportunity years ago to drive the Ford Motor Company, and a guy called Howard Marsden was the boss of Ford Motor Company after Al Turner, as far as motor racing was concerned. And when Al Turner went back to America, Howard Marsden took over. So then when Ford closed the shop, which they normally do, they're not in motorsport long, they come and go, Howard moved to Nissan, and he became the product planning manager for Nissan Motor Company. They were doing rallies, and George Fury was one of the rally drivers, and Duncan and those sort of people in stanzas, and they were very successful in rallies, in the Southern Crosses and all those sorts of things. I didn't do rallying because you get dirty in rallies, so I didn't like doing that. So the thing is, all of a sudden, Howard decided the company needed to get involved in circuit racing. So in whatever year it was, he rang me up and said, "What are you doing FG?" And I said, "Well, no, not a lot, I'm sort of running my own business and doing things." He said, "Well, we've got a car in Japan that may be useful to go racing in 3-litre racing in Australia, in Touring Car Championship." And it was a Bluebird. And I said, "Oh yeah, okay, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, we're going to get a couple out here." It was a Japanese Bluebird, which was a much different car to what we had in Australia. It was like the European, the Japanese Bluebird. We had 1.8 litre turbocharged independent rear suspension Bluebird. We had the base model out here with a live back axle and some little shitbox engine in it. It was a terrible car. Even the race car was a terrible car. But anyway, he started, and we were going to go 3-litre racing in it. And he wanted George Fury to become a bitchman, a circuit racer. So things that people don't understand, he said, "There's George is like a rally driver, and he wanted to be part of the team, and he wanted me to be part of the team and start this new program with Nissan." So that's when I first got involved with Nissan again, and having been involved with Howard over in the Ford days, it was pretty easy to do. And things like I was telling Jimmy today, people don't understand that I used to take George to Oran Park in Sydney and sort of do 2 days a week for months on end to get him to learn to drive a car on the bitumen, because he wanted to chuck it and ram it or something. I don't know what he was doing, like turn it in and chuck it and have the bat hanging out everywhere. So we went there and we used the spans we had, and we turned it into a tarmac car virtually. And of course it was reliable, so we go up there and we go round and round and round and round Oran Park for days and days, 2 days a week for months on end. Because the Bluebird wasn't ready this time. And he became very, very good at driving around Oran Park, because he didn't understand the bitumen was there to be used. You've got to use it all. You've got to go from the apex to the white line on that side of the track and this side of the track. Anyway, he got the hang after a while, and while we were doing this, the guys in the race shop, and the race shop was in Melbourne, it was in Healy Road, 28 Healy Road, I remember it now, a little old workshop down there. That was Nissan's race team as such. Howard Marsden was the product planning manager. So this race team, I suppose, virtually half run itself, because he had a job to do at Nissan Motor Company, product planning, and the race guys sort of did their own thing. Anyway, this car arrived, and it was like a Japanese spec car, a motorsport car. And when we saw the car, we thought, well, this is not going to do very much for us, because with our regulations, it wasn't going to be quick enough. So we did some homologation, which you did those days. You had to homologate the car, had to go through JAF in Japan to get it homologated internationally, and any of the parts you had to use. So it was a lot of work doing that. Anyway, we homologated the parts, and these guys built the car, and I did most of the testing with the car, and the Bluebird program started. If we stayed with the car and used it as a 3-litre car, it would have probably won the 3-litre class every time we went out. But motor racing people are very greedy. We want to be a bit more outright than that. So we started fiddling with things, and sort of like homologation changed, and we tried a little bit bigger turbo, we tried a little bit different suspension in the back, and the car got better. And the first year we run the car, the Japanese arrived at Bathurst, and they bought their own car out here. And it's amazing how, I hope there's not many Japanese here tonight, it's amazing how our car wasn't allowed to run the same spec as their car. And the 2 Japanese drivers arrived at the airport in Sydney. I picked them up with an interpreter, and we drove to Bathurst. We drove around Bathurst, and we drove around. They wanted to see the circuit, so we drove around the circuit. And they said, the interpreter said, "Gibson son, please stop car. We must look at the top of the mountain." And the Japanese guys drivers, Simi and Ashino, and they said they want to know, do we have good brakes on these cars? And I said, what? What are we talking about? Because we have never seen a circuit like this. It dives away and goes down the hill. Very dangerous circuit. Very dangerous. And we have no fence here on the side of the mountain. I said, no, you fall over the mountain to get down the hill. And so they were really impressed, or really unimpressed, with the circuit. But I must say they were great drivers, and that little car, but we were allowed to run 1 bar of boost, but they had 1.4 bar of boost. In qualifying they were allowed 1.8 bar of boost. So the thing is, like, that's the way they used to run their race teams, but they left that car here when they left. So we had 2 Bluebirds at that time. So we modified their Bluebird to set our Bluebird and found out what the things they did that they didn't tell us about before they left the car here. So that made the car, our car, a much better car, because there's lots of things on the car that we didn't think you could have. So the thing is, we run Bluebirds right through to, I suppose, we got to the extremes of George qualified at pole Bathurst one year in the car, but people, you understand, you run it at 1.9, 2.2 bar boost. The intercooler would be packed with dry ice for the 1 lap. So it was so cold going in, and they'd be putting dry ice around the intercooler, and it was a 1 lap special. And he got pole, and everyone was shocked about it. But like, I think that's when the race had a full start or something, and the car was so fragile, it was only really going to do 1 start because it would break something in the 2nd start, which it did. That's how fragile the car was, and that's the extreme we went to with the car. So the car was hard. I did all the testing. It was a difficult car to drive with independent rear suspension and everything in it, but it was successful at getting Nissan involved in motorsport. And those sorts of things, people don't understand how they started in motorsport, and probably because of the direction of Howard Mars, and he thought it was good for the company to be involved in the sport. That's where it all started with Bluebird. And then when we finished with Bluebird, or we were finishing with Bluebird, the next car that was going to come along was the Skyline DR30. And we thought, well, this is half a chance. We should look like going well, but by this time, Nissan was running out of money to be in motorsport. I think we'd spent their budget on their Bluebirds, because all motorsport teams overspend their budget, and Nissan, I think at the time, was starting to struggle a bit, as a manufacturer in Australia, to the car sales business. So we went to DR30, and the DR30 arrived, and then all of a sudden Nissan decided in about end of 84 or something, that this was too expensive because the workshop we had and the mechanics we had were all getting paid under the company umbrella. So they're getting paid triple time on weekends. They were having a lovely time. They were doing pretty well. We go away Friday morning, and they get back Monday morning, and the sort of thing is they've made plenty on the weekend. So they decided to outsource the race team for the DR30 program. And Howard said to me, he said, FG, you're interested in taking over the race team? Because I was thinking about, do I need to keep driving, because it's getting hard when you get old. And so I said, why? He said, would you like to come down and manage the team? Which I thought I was going to manage the team. Anyway, I logged in Melbourne, spoke to this, and I finished up taking the team over completely in 85. And Kristen and I had a meeting at home with our girls and said, we're all going to move to Melbourne for a couple of years and run this race team. So we locked down to Melbourne with the DR30. I took over running the race team for Nissan Motor Company. Howard Marsden was quite happy with that because he was still the product planning manager at the time, and we started getting ourselves organised for DR30. But unbeknownst to, I suppose, myself at the time, the team was deteriorating to the point where there wasn't many people left in the team. So when we got down here, there was 2 people in the team. There was a DR30 which they built. It wasn't very legal, but it was built. And so we had to reassess where we're up to with the whole thing. And there's lots of things we put into that car, like our own idea, or their own ideas at the time. Like the front suspension was bad, the uprights were bad, and Japan did all this, and we made our own uprights for the front of the car because one of the problems with the first Skylines was the front wheel bearings were real bad, and we made our own new uprights for the whole car, with like sort of for endurance racing or long distance racing. So the car wasn't homologated properly, the paper wasn't done properly, and the car was a year late coming out. So So when I logged down there, there's these two mechanics there, and they started telling me how they run this thing and how they do the. Well, they lasted about a month, I think, really, and there was no one there. So there was myself, so we had to start a new team and start a new project. In the meantime, the homologation was late, and I think that year we did Pulsar racing, E2 racing, and the company run E2s and let all the star drivers drive it. Well, that was havoc, because they all crashed and bashed, and what the team we were putting together were doing was preparing ET Pulsars for Nissan and their Pulsar series. In the meantime, but we were getting our homologation through for the DR30. So the following year we had the DR30 ready to go motor racing, and that became quite a successful car. Some of the things that are probably interesting to listen to is, back in those days we all run cross-ply tyres. No one had thought much about radial tyres back in those days. And because Nissan had a contract with OE with Dunlop, we were supported by Dunlop for tyres. And the car was really not a good car. Suspension-wise, had the typical Japanese rear independent back suspension, didn't work very well, not like a race car. So the thing is, but Dunlop were developing a radial tyre, and they were the first to develop a radial race tyre. And the DR30 was the first car to race in the world with a radial race tyre, because we said, well, we need some better tyres than these cross plies. So they made some tyres, they sent some tyres out for the DR30 radials, and because a radial needs lots of neg and that, we didn't know, we were sort of new to this as well. Anyway, we put 4 radials in the car, and the back was terrific. It really made the back of the car so much a different car. It was a drivable car, but the front was shit. So that was the problem. So then we realised what we had to do, so we raced a couple of races with Avon cross plies in the front and Dunlop radials in the back, which was a good choice. So we were very young in those days when we were doing these stupid things. So then we realised you had to run a lot of negative camber on the front of the cars to have radial tyres on your car, because radial tyres in motorsport were new then. And no one really was running, because if you think about Dunlop years ago, they supplied Walkinshaw Racing or TWR in Le Mans and those places, and they all used in their big sports cars were all cross-ply tyres. No one used radial tyres. So we got the hang of it after a while, a bit of testing, and we run radials all around. That transformed the whole car. And the DR30 became a very successful car. And in the meantime, we put a good team together, because I knew Bo Seaton very well and drove up Bathurst with him in Fords and that. I taught him to come into Melbourne. He became our engine man. Glenn Seaton come with him because he's his son, and that was part of the package. I get Glenn as well as Bo. And I was sort of like in a situation where we had to start getting some drivers organised. We had George, and we had Glenn Seaton, we had Bo Seaton. I pinched a few good guys I knew in the industry. And I've always been one of those sort of guys that I like some young people, but I hired some senior people that I knew how to do things. And then the thing is, those senior people teach younger people how to be involved in the sport and how to learn things. Because as our team evolved, it evolved into a 35 people team. 35 people. In our new factory we went to, Jim will speak about later on, but we had 35 people, our own engine department, 2 engine dynos, fabrication department, machine shop. We did everything in-house. Because I realised when I first come down here, everyone sends things to Ronnie Harrop to get done because he was the guru, and all these other machine shops. But they used to arrive at your doorstep at midnight on Friday night for Saturday morning practice. And I thought, this is not the way to go racing. No one, in the motor industry and racing, no one's on time. No one thinks about time. It always arrives late. Have you tried it? No, we'll try it in practice tomorrow. So the thing is, that didn't suit me at all. So we decided to go in-house, everything in-house. And we were one of the first teams in Australia to do everything in-house. I suppose also another thing we did was, when I took over, Howard had organised a sponsorship at the time for DR30 of Peter Jackson, and he had organised that. When Kristen and I arrived in Melbourne, they'd organised us to have a budget of $750,000, and I thought, wow, what a ripper budget that is. And that didn't take long to spend either, I can give you the tip. But the whole thing is, like, we had a budget, we had sponsors, and I felt obligated to sort of help these sponsors promote their brand, because that's what they're giving the money for. So the thing is, whatever I could do to do that, so like the truck we had at the time was an old furniture van, and Nissan used to hire a prime mover to go race weekends when we used to go. So that's not the go for me. So because in this instance in the trucks, we did a deal with UD, we had a UD, we bought a new pan and that. So I was pretty good spending our money as well as Nissan's money. But the whole thing is, you had to give the appearance to look. I said, well, one of my sayings is, if you're not going to do well, look good. And the thing is, that's what my philosophy was. Always look good, and you can get away with it. You bullshit your way through the whole thing by doing that. If you don't look well and you go bad, well, you're in plenty of trouble. So the thing is, like, we always look the part, and I think must say the team from DR 30 days with our transport and the way we do things, I even had people like Dick Johnson and Rocky come along one day and say to me, FG, you're spending too much money, put some in your pocket, don't spend so much, making us look dickheads. And the thing is, but I was always in appearance, you had to look good, and I think one of our cars here, like the Winfield car, but when we had Winfield, we had a $4 million budget. So the thing is, like, they're the sort of things you grow to, and you bring people along, and you bring the team along, and I suppose the DR30 was successful for us. George drove, Glenn drove, and then I was probably said to Bo Seaton, where's another young guy we need? We need to bring another young guy along. So he suggested this guy called Skate from Gosford. And I said, who is he? Don't know him. And he said, oh, well, he's a good mate of Glenn's, he drives pretty well. And he said, you should go and have a look. So I went up, and he was driving in a laser series. And I went up, and he didn't know I was there, and I just went up to Oran Park, and he started from the back of the grid in some ways for some reason. Anyway, he finished second, I think, and I said, he goes, all right. Anyway, I have a big problem with father-sons in motorsport, or family and race drivers in motorsport. I think that's the worst thing that happens in motorsports, isn't it? Really, it's tennis or whatever. The family always seem to get involved with what their kids are doing. So I had a look and did some studying on the whole thing, spoke to Bo Seaton about it, and offered this Skate a drive to come down and be a gopher. And he arrived in Melbourne at 19 years of age to be a gopher. Not promised to drive, just come down and be involved in the workshop, sweep the floor, and go for this and go for that. That's what the gopher's all about, isn't it, really? And the thing is, like, I suppose, when he come down, I made a condition with his father, never to see his father in the pits, never to see his father too close to him at the racetrack. And I must say, Russell, his dad, was fantastic. He never interfered, never got involved, and Scobie come down and joined the team as sometime he might get a drive. And eventually we did get him a drive in a little Gazelle over here, in a 2-litre car. So the thing is, like, and he's gone from strength to strength, as we all know, but we're moving on to HR31 now, and I think I'd like to ask Jim to come up now and have a talk to you, because when Jim joined the team, we were doing HR31s, and from DR30 to HR31 we thought was going to be a really big improvement, which it wasn't. It was another one of those cars you had to do a lot of work to make it into a good car, and we achieved that by hard work. And probably like a lot of technology, because those days were starting to become very technical. You needed engineers, electronics, you're into the brains, and the thing is, like, having your own dyno cells and that was a big advantage to us. Doing our own engines and those sorts of things. But like, I like to pass over to Jim now, and Jim can explain to you when he became involved with HR31 when I stole him off BMW. Thanks, guys.